Good afternoon and a warm welcome to dsnm headquarters. I'm Ollie, Head of Yacht Management here. I'm in the company of Stuart, who is our Digital Development Manager. This is the second in our series of webinars where we're going to show you how to passage plan within Compass and make use of all the available features within that section. Allowing you to create routes, maximize all available information from the software to support your navigation journey. As always, if you have any questions at any stage during the webinar, please write them in the chat tool or the questions section, and we will endeavour to answer them when we can. Otherwise, we'll have a short Q&A at the end of the main webinar to round up any of those queries that you might have. I'll pass you over now to Stuart, who'll guide you through the planning sections in Compass.
Perfect. Thank you, Ollie. So yes, so as Ollie mentioned, we're going to have a more focused overview of the planning section. We did an overview a little while ago of the whole of Compass, but like I said, this is a slightly more focused review of the planning section. So what I'll do is I'll share my screen, which should be sharing now, all being well. And what this will enable me to do is, like I say, just give us a run through of Compass and the planning section more specifically. So what you should see on your screens now is our planning page, or is our dashboard. And what I'll start with is the routes into the planning section. So as you can see from the dashboard tile, we have a planning tile which contains a list of your recently saved routes and also a route into the planning section. Equally, on the left-hand side here, you can click on the planning tab on the nav bar, and that will take you through into planning. So without further ado, we'll step into the planning section and start getting a bit of familiarization with the planning section. So the first place that you land is, like I say, map in view on the route section on the bottom left-hand side. No route currently loaded, so the table's empty. For your reference, on the left-hand side here, we have our layer control. So we have the ability to switch between some simple grey maps, a satellite map, a nautical chart, which is a rasterized CMAP chart, essentially. So it's a chart data layer of unofficial chart data. And that is used in conjunction, or is available in conjunction with the Navtor ENC layer, which is a depiction of the official chart coverage. So essentially, the same chart colors and palettes and symbols that you'd see on your official charting on your ECDIS if your ECDIS primary. So there's some close familiarization there, which is really handy, especially when going through the planning section to go and check areas of coverage. You can obviously log into Compass through any device, and you can essentially use this layer to check coverage before you even head anywhere. On the left-hand side, continuing down the left-hand side, we have a few map controls. So we have the zoom in, zoom out, the reorientation, which allows the map to recentralize to north if you change the angle of it. We have a full screen mode and a range bearing tool here, which can be used to put ranges and bearings on the chart itself. And then we have our route drawing tool, which I'll go into in a bit more detail in a moment. And then top right-hand side at the moment, if I draw your attention to that, this is where our layer options exist. And again, I'll go into this in a bit more detail, but this is where you can go and toggle on a series of layers within the route drawing section to gather that extra layer of information, gain access to that extra layer of information when you're carrying out the planning process. Now, it's worth mentioning that the planning process can either start within Compass, so you can use Compass as that starting point. So you can come in here to draw a route, or import or load a saved route, or equally you can bring routes from other devices into Compass and use the series of tools beyond the initial route drawing sections within Compass. So if you've got routes saved to your ECDIS, for instance, you can export and bring them into Compass. So what I'll start with then is a quick demonstration of route drawing. So route drawing, like I said before, a quick reference tool. You can either come into Compass and just very quickly use the route draw tool to pick up some route distances and times. So you can see here very quickly, as soon as I've dropped those waypoints in, so that's just left clicking on the map, you can see the distance has been calculated, the duration based on the speed that's set, and also a new feature that's actually soon to be released is an estimated fuel usage as well, which again is editable by the crew users. So if I delete that drawn route for a moment, I'll just demonstrate the other avenues for importing a route. So we've got the option to import. So if I draw our attention to the route manager, so we've got a route manager table here. This is where saved routes exist and also saved passage plans. We also have the ability to configure our route defaults. So if you haven't used the passage planning tool within Compass before, you can drop into the configure route defaults, and that allows you to go and set your vessel's specific parameters. So any average cruising speeds, waypoint indexing, etc. On the left-hand side, like I mentioned, here's our saved routes. So I can bring up a saved route by clicking any of these icons here. So if I click on this icon here, you'll see the route will load into view. And then equally, from that route manager, I can also import a route. So if I click on the import route option, this is going to give me the option to import a route, which I've currently got saved on my desktop. But this could be, like I say, a route that's been transferred from another device, time 0, ECDIS. And I can select that and import that route. So you can see by the route file format, I've got a .rtz route here. We can import a multitude of different route formats into Compass. And equally, when I get to it, we can export in a multitude of formats as well. So if I click on open, that's going to open that route there. And what I can do is if I toggle onto a different layer, satellite, for instance, we can now see that imported route. So again, route that's been created on a different device, now available in Compass amongst all the other tools that are available within Compass. The export option exists as well. So once a route's within Compass, if you make any amendments, or like I say, if you've started the route creation process in Compass, you've got the option down here to export the route. So you can see with a route loaded, I can click the export option, and that's going to give me a series of route formats to export. Like I say, whether you want to export back to a time 0 device or to another ECDIS, there's a series of route export options here. Equally, we can export that list of waypoints that make up that route in either an Excel format or a waypoint PDF file. So there's a few options there that you can choose to use. So what I'll do now is if I start stepping through kind of the process within Compass. So the drawing option I think we've identified. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to load. I'm going to use this route and start displaying kind of the other tools that you can start overlaying within here. So like I mentioned, we've got a couple of chart layers. So I can toggle onto the nautical chart layer, which is a CMAP layer. You'll see the color palette slightly different to the E&C layer. And this enables us, through the worldwide license that we offer to all of our Compass users, the ability to go in and essentially, with a route in place, you can start evaluating that route and analyzing each section of that route. So you can see I can scroll through the route, I can identify sections and chart information within and waypoints pertinent to those particular pieces of information. So you can see this TSS has been labeled either side with an entry and exit point. And equally, this channel on the exit of Olbia has been mentioned or been annotated as well. So what we can actually do, we can select waypoints either from routes that have been created or imported, and we can edit them. So I can add a note here. So I can type in channel here, for instance, and I can save that, and that's going to save that information on this waypoint as well. So again, you can edit and add more information to each waypoint, each section, and equally you can edit the information within each waypoint. So if I click on edit here, you can edit the speed, for instance. We can also add notes as well. Now, this information, in particular the notes, this will ultimately make its way through to the final passage plan, which is all part of this kind of planning journey that we're going to go through in this webinar. As mentioned, you can toggle between not only the nautical chart, but also the Navtor E&C layer. So again, from a route analysis perspective, you've got visual access to that same sort of charting that you're going to be using on your ECDIS. So again, you can go in and you can see and evaluate each section. As I go into Naples here, when this route finally takes us, again, you can see the information. And again, you can check the coverage. That's an important part of what kind of I'm trying to demonstrate here with Compass. You can very, very quickly go in and you can start visually identifying what levels of coverage, E&C coverage, are available for your routes, your selected route. In addition, so the last map layer I'm going to show here is the satellite map. So the satellite map adds an additional kind of tooling, I guess. And again, this is used predominantly for kind of awareness, situational awareness. What it allows you to do is actually use the 3D map layer to kind of go down and view how your route kind of appears, what you're likely to see, points of interest along that route, reference points, etc. You can go down, you can see kind of, essentially in a 3D view, what you're likely to see along that route. So that's available within the satellite layer. Again, if I zoom out, and that's simply accessed using the right click, I should mention. So just right click and hold. If you're using Compass already, you'll be able to go and, like I say, right click and hold and use the mouse to reorientate yourself to a 3D perspective. Beyond the final map layers on the left-hand side, as I mentioned, we've got a route range bearing tool. So I can use that to assign myself with range bearings. So again, I can see off this particular point the distance that we're going to be traveling, and also from our route the course that it will be visible from. Equally, if there's any amendments that need to be made to this route, I can go in and I can use the edit option here, or I can use the continue route option. So if I wanted to add some more waypoints to the end of my route that's loaded, I can use the continue route. Or like I say, edit route will allow us to add in additional waypoints. So you can see as soon as I click on the edit mode, all of the waypoints they highlight in yellow. And this allows me to add additional waypoints. So I can click on this waypoint here, end the route again, and you can see now I've got an additional waypoint that's been updated in the table here, or on the map, and also in the table here. So that's, I guess, the interaction with the route on the chart itself. If I bring our attention down to the table, so the table is going to give us a list of the waypoints, and then on the left-hand side you can see route name. So route name in this case has been brought in with that route file, but equally if the route is being created within Compass, you can edit the name there. On the left-hand side, we've got a departure. The times are all in UTC, so you can set your departure time, and then based on that, any distance, time will be calculated. And equally, the schedule you can see on this table will be also calculated. I mentioned fuel settings. So for those of you that are currently using the live version of Compass, you won't yet necessarily see this at the minute, but this is a change that's coming in. It's going to be released very shortly. So it's a very simple fuel calculator, but what it allows you to do is set your average cruising consumption. So you can change that and save that within here. But if I add in, if I adjust that up to 300, I can click save, and you'll see the estimated fuel consumption will increase accordingly. Again, that's a very quick reference tool, again, from a planning perspective, to give you those rough estimates for fuel consumption. Now, on the right-hand side, like I mentioned before, we have a series of layer options. These can be toggled on, and these can be viewed alongside your passage. So I can toggle the layer option on, and that's going to allow me to start selecting from this series of options. So I can toggle nav area warnings, for instance, which is going to allow me to select the nav area coordinator, as we can see highlighted here, nav area 3, and I can click to view warnings on map. So that's going to allow me to view any warnings that are in force and see where they are in relation to my planned route. I can click on that warning spatial, and you can see that now appearing in the pop-up here. So that's the warning that's covering most of the Western Med that's coming into force in May, just for a day, and you can actually print that warning from here as well. So again, a very quick reference point for any nav area warnings that are in effect for your routes. Alongside that, we have a few MARPOL layers. So we have an outline of the PSSA areas, so the particularly sensitive sea areas, and any warnings that they carry. Any MARPOL coastal areas. So again, an indication as to the coastal regions, MARPOL coastal regions that you're going to be traveling through on that route. Any special areas, and equally any ECA areas. We're soon to update on May the 1st, the ECA area for the Mediterranean. That's in the process of being put together. So in due course, we'll have the additional new ECA area for the Med. Finally, on the right-hand side, we have a couple of other options. So we have a territorial waters. So this identifies which waters the vessel is going to be traveling in. So you can see here, highlighting the 12 nautical mile territorial waters. We can select on those and we can see the territorial waters they apply to. And then the last section I'm going to display on the right hand side here is the Explore with IMRAE option. So Explore with IMRAE is a layer that includes essentially all of the geo-referenced points within the IMRAE series of publications. So you can see, once I've turned that layer on, these icons that appear on the chart. What this allows me to do, it allows me to go in and select and view these points. So I'll click on one of these icons here, and you'll see that will bring up the respective information from the relevant IMRAE pilot. So you can see here, this section is from the Italian Waters pilot. It's got the extract for that particular point that I've selected. And again, from here, this can be printed and saved and used in conjunction with your passage plan. And again, that's all inclusive. That's all part of the Compass package that you, when you subscribe to dsnm, subscribe to our service, you get as a standard. So I think that's probably covered the majority of our route planning, our route creation, our route drawing, import, export, etc. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to load up a slightly different route. So I'm going to delete this route using this delete icon here. I'm going to go to my route manager and I'm going to select another route for the Mediterranean. So you can see very quickly any saved routes, we can go in and we can recall from our saved routes table. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to step through from the route section and I'm going to step on into the weather section. So within our planning section, we have access to our weather data. So the weather data, separately accessible through the weather tab, is also included in part of our passage planning process. So what this enables you to do is overlay the weather data that's going to be applicable to your passage. We have about a 10-day forecast lead into weather, and we have a multitude of different weather forecast models. So you can see them up on the right-hand side here. We have ECMWF and GFS. ECMWF is the primary, it's the higher resolution out of the two. And these are the weather forecast models that form the foundations of our weather data. So ultimately what we're seeing here is a series of additional layer options. You would have seen that pop up as I entered the weather section. We've got a weather options layer here, which allows us to select the various different overlays. So I can toggle between wind, wave, etc. And that's going to affect the overlay that we see on the actual chart itself. So if I select waves, you'll see the wave layer appear into view. And then at the bottom here, we have a graphical depiction of the weather variables. So again, if I toggle that over to waves, we'll see the wave heights according to a departure time that we've currently set for that route. So what we can do is if we look at this route and we've got our Barcelona to Monaco route loaded up, we've got our departure time set as today at 12:59 UTC, so kind of immediate departure. And like I say, within the weather, what we can identify quite quickly from this graph especially is any points along that route that are potentially, in this case, seeing higher levels of wave activity. In conjunction with the graph and the image on the chart overlay, we can also toggle on the right-hand side here this warnings icon. So again, this became available as we toggled into the weather section of planning. I can toggle onto the route warnings, set my parameters. I've got some preset parameters here, but you can adjust and save these according to your preferences. And we can toggle on the route warnings. And what that's going to do is very quickly give us a couple of points along the route where these parameters are exceeded. So again, all in part of that kind of weather-related review of that passage, you can quite quickly dial into sections along that route that need extra levels of attention. So as we zoom in here, you can see these points, these data points are coming up, these warning points, and it's highlighting to me what parameters are being exceeded. Obviously, the red warnings are exceeding the higher end of my saved parameters, and orange is just within that warning section. Now, there's a couple of things we can do here. Naturally, is we can review the route and we can make any adjustments to the route, or equally we can make an adjustment to the departure time. So if I go into our route here and I adjust my departure time, so I go, let's push the departure time through until tomorrow afternoon and click apply. If we toggle back to the weather section, what that's going to do, it's going to reevaluate the latest weather forecast based on that new departure time. And it's going to come up with any other warnings that are going to be applicable. Now, as we can see, tomorrow looks like a much better day for departing. Only one warning, small wave height warning. But other than that, the route itself looks considerably calmer. And as you can see from the graph here as well, as you hover through the graph, you can see where your vessel will be in respect to that position based on the graph and the forecast. And equally, we can move ourselves through the actual vessel through. We can animate it through the route, so we can see. As I drag through, you can see the weather rest call with the wind, swell, wave, and gust variables appearing and following the actual vessel location. And also by moving the vessel, we also see an updated tile behind. So again, from a reference point, you can update everything you're seeing according to that route and where you're likely to be according to your speed and your departure time on that specific route. In addition to the weather information that you're visually seeing, so the graph layer, the graph and the chart overlay, we also include within the planning weather section a short synopsis. So you can see on the left hand side every time I make any adjustments and updates. But we're using ChatGPT, AI synopsis tool, to essentially take all of that weather data, so all of those hourly points along that route, and condense them into a simple synopsis. So you can see it's a roughly 250 word synopsis that's created on the left hand side here. So again, a very quick and easy to read and reference textual overview of your planned route. And again, this is going to contain all of the variables that are available. So yeah, that's again, I think probably the primary part of the weather kind of tab covered over. As mentioned, you can toggle between these. This is going to affect our layers. So within each of these models, we have the subsequent layers. I've left it on ECMWF for now, but yeah, you can toggle into wind, for instance. You can toggle on wind barbs, so you can see, again, add layers of information. Isobars, you can have particles as well. So if you prefer that over the wind barbs, you can add the particles for a bit of animation. The last element within the weather section is the dedicated route weather report. So what we can create within the weather section, again very quickly, is a weather report for that route. So again, based on all the information we've inputted, we can create a weather report. So that's going to allow me to construct a weather report based on my preferences. So in this case, if I want to include the AI synopsis, like what we saw on the left-hand side, a quick map overview, and a couple of the variables, I'll select them here and I'll create that weather report. And you'll see that I'll go away for a couple of seconds and it will create for us this nice, clear and concise document. So again, departure times, route information, our synopsis, small map to accommodate this, and also the graphs from the data variables that I've selected. So again, this can be used and shared around crew, kept on the bridge, printed, or saved as a PDF and shared between those on board via that means. So the next section that I'm going to step through to is going to be the tidal section. So tidal section is only requires a very brief kind of overview. But essentially what we have access to in here is tidal point information. So you can see within the table at the bottom as it updates, we've got a point for our departure tidal information, and I can toggle through to an arrival tidal information. It's going to give us a 24-hour window for either side of our planned arrival or planned departure and planned arrival times. Now, what I would mention, this is for reference, although it's accurate. We obviously recommend for our SOLAS vessels, at the very minimum, to reference their Admiralty total tide and use that to cross-check and ultimately reference the tidal information. The final section within our planning process is the product section. So this is essentially, once you've got your route in place, you've done all your other checks, you can use the product section to check to make sure you have products available for that route. So let me just toggle off the weather warnings to get rid of that last warning. So within products, like I mentioned, we can select and search through certain product types based on what your particular vessel uses. So if I click on the select products to search, I can create a corridor if we want to search slightly wider on either side of our route. But if I want to just keep a very accurate search, not put any buffer or corridor either side of that route, I'll leave that at 0. And in this case, I'm going to select our paper charts. I'm going to select ADP, lights, tides, and radio signals, and ENP. Once I've selected that group of products, I can click search, and that's going to bring up for us, if I just toggle onto a slightly less colorful map, we'll toggle onto the gray map, it's going to bring up for us the products that are required for that route or are available for that route to be used. So you can see on the left-hand side of the table, we've got an option to select between the product types we selected, so paper charts, lights, tides, and radio signals, or ADP and ENP. Paper charts is by default selected at the moment, and you can see the spatials and the outlines of the available charts and their status, both depicted in the table through the traffic light system, either red, green as active and owned, or yellow, which would depict either asleep, i.e. is tucked away somewhere on board, or it requires corrections. What we can do from here is we can deselect charts that are not going to be required. So some of these overview charts that we're not going to need, I can deselect them from the table, or equally I can go onto the actual the chart itself. I can select or left click on the actual spatial and click the delete option to remove it. So again, we can use this to tidy up our selection and make sure we're only using the charts that we really require. I'll just minimize that. We can use that option so we get a bit more map real estate. And from our final selection, we can see there's just one that's not on board. So you can see this not owned chart 1704 for this particular selection. Now, from there, we can do a couple of things. We can add it to our basket, and ultimately that's going to allow us to request it from your DSNM fleet manager. So that one item that is needed, but not currently on board, as long as obviously we're planning this route far enough ahead of the actual planned voyage. You know, your fleet manager from DSNM can get that chart printed and sent out to you within a couple of days. That can be done, like I say, once it's added to basket. I can use the request items option, which is going to send an email to your fleet manager, but they'll be in contact with you naturally to confirm any details regarding delivery, addresses, etc., and any other items that may be required for that particular route. Beyond the paper charts, as I mentioned, we selected a couple of other products. So I've got the ADRS. So again, we can see an outline of what we need, and we can see the expiry. So for digital licenses, it's going to identify an expiry date for us. And then the final one is going to be the ENP. So again, we can see we've got 1361, so we don't need that. We can remove that from our selection. So the two ENPs, 45 and 46, to get us from Barcelona to Monaco, are both active and are both licensed until the end of May. So again, you know, quite quickly, we've gone from importing a route, checking weather, to checking products. It's quite a quick process from end to end. And yeah, it really contains a lot of information that isn't necessarily available through your ECDIS, things like weather information, product information. You know, that's all available through Compass. Where we're a web-based application, we don't have the restrictions that an ECDIS might have in terms of its connectivity. So we can add those kind of layers of information in and keep them up to date, more importantly. So once we've got the products in place, I'm ultimately building this route. We can use the create passage plan, which is the kind of the final section of this process. And this is where we can create the document that's ultimately shared again on board and signed off and contains all of the information we've collated through this process. So I'm going to click the create passage plan option. Again, this is going to carry the route information through. I'm going to add in a time offset again from UTC. For the local times, and again, similarly to the products and the weather report, the route weather report, it gives us the ability to choose what we want to have within this passage plan. So again, very customizable based on your specific requirements. So you can see in this case, I've got a few pre-selected options, and again, these are saved. So each time, if you have a favorite kind of selection of sections within the passage plan, they'll be remembered. So each time you come in, you don't have to do the reselection, but you can see there's a series of options, and I'm just going to toggle on the remaining sections here, so they get included within our passage plan. Once you're happy with that, I'm going to create the passage plan, and what that's going to do is going to go off and collate all of that information into a single PDF document, which you'll see appearing on the screen now. So again, within Compass, you can further review this passage plan. So an introduction cover page, vessel logo can be added here. So through, I'll show in a moment, but you can add your vessel logo into here to make the document a little more customized. A brief overview of information at the start here, departure times, offsets, speeds, durations, etc. A note section, so these sections are editable, so you can add in test notes here, and other pertinent information. That first page also covers a sign-off sheet, so if there's multiple people that are collaborating and obviously signing off this passage plan, they can each come into here and they can review, and they can put their position or name and signature into here. So if I put my initials and click to sign, I can put a signature in here. You can upload signatures as well. So if you've got a saved one, you can have that saved and just to apply automatically. And then in here, I'm going to put the date for sign off. Again, if I keep working through here, you can see we've got a page for departure port information. So again, some of this information is going to be collected from your ATT information, your Tidal information, any VHF channels, any pilotage information that you need to apply. You can enter all of these into these fields here. Again, notes, plenty of space to add information that's pertinent to your passage. Moving on down through the passage plan document, we've got, again, an overview. So again, a nice reference, a nice bit of identification to this document to show you kind of from where you're going, and the overview of the route, just a very simple overview. And then moving down through, we've got the waypoint information, so you can see any of the waypoints that I've adjusted and renamed, any notes that I've added. So we saw the notes section earlier on when I was creating a route. You can see the notes that have been added in here on the right hand side. So again, containing all this information into a nice contained document. Here are our products. So you can see that product chart that I hadn't yet acquired is showing as not owned. The rest are active, and all up to date by the looks of it. Again, moving down through the remaining products, we then move on to the nav error warnings. So again, any nav error warnings, that nav error warning that we actually identified a little earlier, you can see that it's currently available. It's not in force. It's only in force in May, but it's available. And because it's en route, it's picked up and it's shown in full. So you can see this first nav error section here. Any nav error warnings that the vessel is planning to passage through that are active and available, it will highlight them in their full text here. So they can be read, reviewed, and plotted if necessary. So you could take that information, you could obviously then proceed to plot it onto your ECDIS. Moving on down through, we've got general warnings. So any area warnings that don't have a spatial as such, but are just textual information for that particular nav area that you're going to be operating within, they'll be displayed here, and they can be referenced from within Compass. So you can go back into Compass if you need to view these in any more detail and identify the warning number. We then have a passage planning checklist. So this is taken from the Bridge Procedures Guide. So it's a static appraisal process that you can step through and you can check off. And equally at the very end, we've got a couple of sections where you can add in any specific checklist options, pre-departure, pre-arrival, that you so wish to. And then the final section on here is our route synopsis. So just a snippet of the textual overview of that weather that's expected to be seen for that route is included within that final section on the passage plan. And again, obviously this can all be saved and printed and saved and shared locally on the bridge or via email. So what we can do from here, like I mentioned, is we can either print it, we can download it and save it locally. But when I go to close this, it's going to give us an option to email this passage plan. So what I can do from within Compass, I can actually email this to other users. So for instance, if you had a series of users, a captain, second officer, chief officer, all set up as users within Compass, this field here, this email field, will be preloaded with their email addresses. And from here, you can simply hit email, and that's going to email that with yourself in copy. So if you're the chief officer creating the passage plan within Compass as your user, you'll be in copy, and you'll send essentially that email to the other Compass users as an email thread. So you can take it out of Compass and share it through that means. If I save the report changes, that's going to save that route report within our route manager. So I can go within route manager and you can see that route that's just been saved there. So equally, in the same way that you can share it outside of Compass, you can actually keep the document within Compass, and your fellow bridge team members can come into Compass to review that document by clicking on the actions option here and the magnifying glass. That's going to recall that document. And equally, once they've reviewed it, they could go in here and they could apply their approval, their sign off. So if I put in Ollie's initials here and put in his signature, I can click create, and that's going to allow me to put in his details and save. So again, once we close out of here, you can click save report changes, and that will save and update that document ready for ultimate passage and use. I think that's probably the majority of the run through. Like I mentioned, that's kind of a slightly more detailed kind of overview of the passage planning process within Compass and the information that can be accessed within here and information that's at your disposal. Obviously, the different routes that can be used to use this section, whether you're creating a route, importing a route. And equally, it can be used post kind of or during passage. So you can actually use this, use the planning tool whilst you're underway. So you could essentially, whilst the vessel's underway, you can use the route section and the weather section to essentially recreate that route from your current location to your destination to create an updated weather report. So you could use that weather reporting report periodically throughout your voyage just to get that latest, most up-to-date weather report for your onward voyage.
Just want to, only because there's a question with respect to that about able to sort of monitor regarding passage with live weather models. So I think we're just about to touch on it then. Just in respect to that question about being able to monitor and update in terms of the live weather.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. So at the moment, we have a manual way for retrieving that up-to-date weather information. So if you had a route in place, so you can see this particular vessel's location is shown here. So this is a live AIS position for this particular demo vessel that we've got. So if you can imagine kind of prior to passage, we would have had this vessel heading down to their ultimate destination. That would have obviously given us from a departure point the weather forecast information. But what we can simply do is we can return into Compass, we can reload the route if it's saved within Compass, and then all we need to do is just simply delete any waypoints that we've already passed through, And ultimately what that's going to do is enable us to report on that remaining part of that route. So again, I can use the same functions and features that I've shown previously. So we can go into weather again, and we can see the information for the remainder of that route. Again, any warnings that may be in place. So here we go, a couple of warnings based on my parameters for this. And again, it's going to give us that latest and up-to-date information for the remainder of that voyage. Now what we're doing, the Compass passage planning section has undergone a lot of change recently, and what we're aiming to do is essentially automate that. So instead of having to come in and manually adjust your route, the plan will be for Compass to react based on your loaded route and your current location to calculate the weather for the remainder of your route. So although it's very easy and quick to do at the moment, we're going to make it even easier to do in the not so distant future. And that's on our kind of immediate roadmap. That's kind of what we're aiming to do within the next 6 to 12 months. Hopefully that covers your question.
Yeah, just a couple more that have popped in. Just with regards to the passage plan and the finalised document, the ability to omit any pages on it or information that isn't required. The question centres on thinking of shorter vessel movements regarding anchoring or a move to the next bay, etc. So how we could adjust the details that are produced within the final passage plan.
Yeah, absolutely. So our passage plan is broken down into sections. So whenever you go through to the creation page on the right hand side, so the creation button, you'll see there's an option of selectable series of options. So you could file this right down to a very simple kind of removal of checklist, removal of tidal information. You could simply have just your map and your waypoints. So if I create that for this same route that we've got in place here, I can just show you kind of how short and succinct that can be. So again, this is giving me a 4-page document. So again, cover page by default, map, which is selectable, and the waypoint table, which is also selectable. So I've got 3 sections within there. The cover page. So you could just have the cover page. That's the shortest, most simplistic document you could have. But cover page, map, and waypoint table are the 3 selectable options that I've included in this slightly shortened passage plan. Equally, if you only had a small handful of waypoints, that would probably fall into 1 page. We've got nine waypoints on a page, so you could have a 3-page document which contains, I think, probably all the information you'd really need for a small movement.
Perfect. Just a final question here as well regarding a check route function with regards to the passage planning on the Compass system.
Yeah, again, a very good question. So at the moment, we do not have the ability to do a route check. It's a work in progress. Without going into huge amounts of detail, the data that we have is essentially a rasterized tiled version of chart data. So if I toggle back onto one of the chart layers, essentially this information that we're seeing is a rasterized version. So we see all of the chart detail, we just don't have the vectorized data beneath it at the moment. Now, whilst that data is available, the technical kind of, I guess, drivers behind being able to do that via a web-based application aren't quite there yet. They're very close, and it's something that we're striving to kind of work towards. And once they are, ultimately you'll be able to do a route check on here. That's kind of, again, very much on our near horizon. We're just waiting for a few things to come into place to enable that. But at the moment, the route check is mostly only available through a visual kind of evaluation. Hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, there was one further question, sorry, just in relation to our weather provider and where we pull those details from and the company that is.
Yeah, absolutely. So we take our weather data from a company called Met Ocean Solutions. They work with the New Zealand Met Office, in the same way that many other national Met offices, they're using global data. We're using their service predominantly because of the way that they provide the data to us. So they give us a very, very raw access to forecast data, which enables us to do the kind of the weather plotting that we were seeing a minute ago. So it really gives us the ability to gather that raw data, bring it into warnings, bring it into a synopsis. Alongside the raw data, they also kind of give us the ability to draw in the weather data layers, like we were seeing the overlay information. So essentially what we're seeing here. So if I toggle back on the weather layer here, you can see They give us access to that as well. They're using kind of common models, so ECMWF and GFS. They're fairly common worldwide forecast models. So although they're kind of common, the nuance of using the company that we've chosen is simply because of the way that they allow us to deliver the data, and the raw access to the weather data.
Perfect. No more questions. Live questions.
Fantastic. Well, hopefully that was informative. I'll end the screen share and I'll pass back to Ollie.
Brilliant. So thanks to everyone that's joined us for the webinar. We really do appreciate your time. Don't forget that DSNM clients can book full personal demos of Compass just by reaching out to your yacht manager or by sending an email to info@dsnmltd.com. There'll be a demo request form on our website, and if you're not one of our clients, we'll be more than happy to spend some time with you and give you a personal demo. Thank you very much for your time.